Hi, my name is Lucy. I'm a resource coordinator here at Food Vendors Food Bank, and today we are making Chiles Rellenos, or stuffed peppers. We're going to do a vegetarian version using lentils and cheese, and a chicken version that's going to have some added veggies in it. So today we've got onion, garlic, tomatoes, parsley, some cilantro, some almonds, and this is quesadilla, or you can look for Monterey Jack, mozzarella, pretty much any cheese that's melting. But if you want something more authentic, you can use Chihuahua cheese, which just again melts really nice. And we're gonna blend that with the lentils. So far over here, we've got the poblanos that were rinsed. You can use bell peppers if you want. Poblanos are a little bit smokier and can be a little bit spicier. So we're gonna take the seeds out of those here in a minute. So right now they've been sweating. They were put in the broiler, just on a cookie sheet under broil. You can do high or low broil, but obviously you'll have to watch the peppers and just keep an eye on them. Make sure you don't burn them, then they're harder to work with. Here they've already been charred. You want to keep the stem as long as possible, it just helps with handling them. And then the whole point of sweating them out is just to help get the skin off really easily. So now that they've been in here for, I would say 15 minutes or so, when they're cool to the touch, they're still a little bit warm, but as you can see, the skin just peels off really easy. You can use paper towel if you want to. If it gets a little bit tough, you can use a kitchen knife to just kind of scrape at the skin, but it just comes off really, really easy once they've been sweating for a while. And that just makes them easier to eat, so you're not getting a lot of that skin. So that's what you want your pepper to look like once you've got most of that skin off, and then you're gonna set them aside. I'll get to the rest in a minute. I'll go ahead and show you how to cut them up. So you want to start as close to the top as you can and cut about halfway down. You don't want to go all the way down because that does make it harder to close. So once you've opened it up enough that you can see inside, then you take your knife very carefully and you cut as close to the top as possible, and the whole core just kind of pops out. And if you don't want to get your hands all covered in, what is that? Whatever it is that makes your hands get all spicy. You can take the core out with the fork and it just pulls out, and you want to have those threads that go down the side that actually has a lot of spiciness to it too. And that'll help it not to be as spicy because the pepper itself is pretty smoky flavored. So that one's ready to go. We're going to shred the cheese. We're going to dice up the tomato. Then we're going to saute our onion and our garlic, add the tomato to that, and shred the chicken that we've already boiled here, just a little bit of salt and water. And this filling will be ready. We add almonds to it and fresh parsley. So right now we are toasting the almonds. It just helps them to have a little bit more of a crunch and they won't be raw. So before, in the same pan, I'm going to saute the chicken. Just gonna toast the almonds really fast and set them aside. Around quickly, and once they start getting a light golden color to them, then they are done. So while those toast, we've got shredded chicken here. We've got our onion, some garlic, some parsley. I'm gonna finish dicing up some tomato. You can use a can of tomatoes if you want, or you can use whatever garden tomatoes you have. They are gonna cook down, so you don't want to dice them too small. Doesn't have to be perfect, just a rough dice is fine. The onions also for this recipe, because everything is shredded, it's kind of just the way my mom always did it. You want to do more of, I guess, like sliced onion, like rings. So I always cut it in half and then cut them that way, so I have onion rings. Everything cooks down, so you don't want it to be too small, because then it's just mushy. You want your food to have some appeal to it. All right, so as you can see now, they mostly have a little bit of a light yellow color to them, and they do burn really quickly, so we're gonna go ahead and take them out and just gonna set them aside. You don't have to use almonds if you don't want to, but everything else is soft, and food is really a lot about texture. So having something crunchy in there is really nice. We're gonna add just about a tablespoon or two of oil. You can use whatever oil you like. Then in Mexican cooking, you almost always start with the garlic first. It looks like it could use just a tad more oil. In any type of cooking, you just really want to pay attention if you cut up too much vegetables, or you just want to adjust as you need to. Even though I said a tablespoon or two of oil, I needed a little bit more so things to get done. Our tomato, and wash the parsley. It's always easy if you roll it up and bunch it up. It just makes it so much easier to handle. And a lot of people suggest that you cut the stems off, but the stems have a lot of flavor, so just dice them up really well. And use them in your recipe. It's less waste and it's just more flavor for your recipe. So we're doing a rough chop for this part. Our chicken's ready. I'm gonna go ahead and add that. And ideally you want to have really juicy tomatoes to coat the chicken and help get some of that flavor in there. You can put a lid on this and put it on low if you have time to get all those flavors to mix together. We're gonna add a tiny bit of salt, and then at the very end, we'll add in our parsley and the almonds, and your filling is ready to go to stuff the peppers. We've got some cheese, the same type that we grated and added to the lentils. As long as it's some type of a melting cheese, you can also use queso fresco, which is easily found in your grocery store where the refrigerated cheeses. And these are kind of small peppers, So you don't want to overfill it too much to where things are going to fall out. Just enough to where it'll overlap a little bit. So in this example, I just want to show you, it's okay if the stem falls off. It just makes it easier to handle. Again, if you want to be really careful about the spice, I took a spoon and cleaned out all the extra seeds. And it's okay if your pepper rips open a little bit more. It just makes it easier on you if you don't let it cut all the way down. But I'm taking a spoon, and again with the filling, as you can see, it's pretty dry. There's a tiny bit of juice at the bottom, but you want it to be more dry because the traditional recipe says to fry them lightly in a little bit of a meringue that we're going to make here in a second. But I'm using the back of the spoon to press it gently into the pepper so that they get stuffed really well. You don't want to overstuff it, so we're just pressing it in there, and then I'm going to check here, and if they overlap well and there's just a little bit of give, that's perfect. So you could use a toothpick and insert it through here so that it stays closed together, but I'm going to show you a trick with flour, and it's going to stay together like that. And when we fry it, we're going to put it seam down like this, and that's going to help seal that side, and then we'll gently flip it over and it'll stay all together. So the traditional recipe for chiles rellenos, or stuffed peppers, the peppers are sprinkled lightly with flour, which helps the egg meringue that I'm going to make here in a second to stick to the pepper since it is pretty wet. And you do this simply by separating egg whites and egg yolks. You whisk the egg whites until they're soft peaks, and then you drop in the yolks and blend those in just enough until it's a light yellow color, and you dip the eggs into that, and that's what you saute or fry in the pan. It's not deep fried, it's just a shallow fry until it's golden. The egg meringue is cooked since everything in the pepper is already cooked, and then they're done. Those are traditionally served on a plate with rice. There's also a red sauce that is made, which Rosie is preparing the vegetables for here in a second, and you can either pour that on top of the stuffed pepper, or like my mother used to do, you make the sauce and then you put the peppers in the sauce, and the meringue absorbs that tomato-y flavor, and they're ready to go. So I'm going to separate a couple eggs here, and you don't need very much because it's just enough to cover the egg. So since these peppers are fairly small and there's about 6 of them, I think we're going to just do 3 egg whites. Like I said, you want to reserve the yolk. I'm using the shell to help me in getting the egg white. It is a little bit of a messy process, but you just let the egg white fall out, then you transfer it, and it all just kind of naturally comes apart. You don't want to get any egg yolk in this part because the fat will keep the egg whites from fluffing up. So at this point, those peaks were nice and soft. If you go like this, it should stand firm. It will also not move, but now that I've added the egg yolk, it immediately starts breaking down that consistency and it gets runnier. So you just want to mix it enough to where the yolk is blended in, but you're not knocking out all that air that you just whipped into that. So this is ready to go. I didn't use all the egg yolks, I only used 2. Oh yeah, go ahead and add the onion. Rosie is sauteing garlic with a little bit of oil, about 2 to 3 tablespoons, and she's now gonna add some onion now that the garlic has gotten nice and golden. She's gonna saute the onion until they get translucent, and then she's gonna add the tomato. So I've got some flour here. You don't need very much. It's just a little sprinkle to help the eggs stick to the pepper. Like I mentioned, it's so much easier if you can use toothpicks, but you don't have to. As long as your pepper overlaps like this, just keep your finger there on the seam, and you're just getting a little bit of flour on there to get that egg to stick. Again, being careful to keep that in place. You're gonna put it in the egg, and then you push the meringue up onto it. We can let it hang out in there while my pan finishes getting hot. So for those who aren't able to use flour, we can use cornstarch. It works just as well. Again, it's just something to lightly coat the pepper and help the meringue to stick to it. So we're just brushing a tiny bit on here. Then we're going to drop it in the meringue.
I think we're at a boil over here.
Again, you're not moving the pepper around a lot, just so the things don't fall out. We've got our pepper, so we're gonna very carefully scoop it out. Place it in the oil. Just want to keep it in the same spot. I like to take a little bit of the meringue and put it over the seam. And it's just going to get nice and golden. Alright, so once you see that all the meringue is cooked, which is basically until it changes into a light golden color like this, you want to drain them on some paper towel so that they're not greasy. Over here,